Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Estrangement from parents, siblings, or children. Each story is unique and different. Today we're talking about the family stories that don't always get told. When connection hurts more than distance, estrangement becomes the path forward. Let's explore why and what comes after. Family estrangement is one of those deeply personal experiences that often lives in the shadows, unspoken, misunderstood, and emotionally charged. While we may see stories of reconciliation in movies or TV shows, real life is far messier. People are walking around carrying the weight of broken ties with parents, siblings, or even their own children, and many of them feel very isolated in that pain and shame. In some cases, estrangement is a form of self-protection. It can be an act of reclaiming safety or emotional well-being when repeated efforts to repair or communicate have failed. For others, it may feel like a last resort that still doesn't sit comfortably. There's no one-size-fits-all story here, just complicated feelings of hurt, boundary struggles, love, shame, and longing. The pain of estrangement isn't just about absence. It's about birthdays without a phone call, holidays layered with discomfort because in-laws have inserted themselves into adding to the distance, and often there is a burden of unspoken resentments that have been stockpiled. Even those who choose distance feel its ache, and those left behind often carry confusion, anger, and guilt. There's no one-size-fits-all, as I mentioned earlier. Estrangement touches every part of the emotional spectrum. Grief, guilt, regret, relief, and sometimes hope. Just as families can be too intertwined with grown adults not dating without parental approval, families can also be ships passing in the night, not taking time to understand each other or address regrets and mistakes and misunderstandings that have been made. Healthy families balance respectful distance with respectful closeness that creates room for the differences. Estrangement festers in the silence of not speaking up about pain, hurt, or disagreement. We often shortcut to distance by building a giant pile of resentments over years and avoiding the hard work of honest conflict. Conflict that is respectful leads to new insights that can offer a surprising new level of intimacy. Conflict and being uncomfortable almost always leads to growth. Estrangement keeps us frozen in our mistakes and misunderstandings. I'm going to say it again because I think it's that important. Estrangement keeps us frozen in our mistakes and misunderstandings. It's a topic wrapped in shame and silence. People don't talk about their family rifts because they fear being judged, or they worry they'll be told, just get over it, or forgive and forget. But the reality is, estrangement is much more common than we think because it remains hidden by so many. Talking about it can help people feel less alone in the complexities of this often difficult choice. Families are a group of people who have history together. Estrangement interrupts that precious history. To help us explore this important topic today is my first guest to return in the same year, Dr. Rachel Glick. She was the guest in episode 141 who wrote her newest book, Soulful Marriage. She is a licensed professional counselor with 30 years as couples and individual therapist in private practice. Since 2014, she has been a regular feature on the Fox 2 a.m. show in St. Louis as a relationship and mental health expert. expert. She is also a featured author for Mind Body Green, an online magazine reaching over 10 million readers each month. Thanks so much for joining me again this year, Rachel.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Let's begin with what are causes of family estrangement? And part two, does it happen in a slow build or a single event or both?
Those are great questions. Where would you like me to begin?
Wherever you want.
Okay, well, I can start with some of the causes. They're both like personal, like general and particular. So the general ones are the changing culture and mores around therapy, around chosen family versus following the protocol of what we were raised with, the empowerment of the next, the younger generations that continue to evolve. They are much more intentional and selective about the people in their lives. And there's, different ways you can view that. Some people are judgmental of that, and some people find it very refreshing and empowering. And there's always a plus and a minus to every change in the world, So the good news is that there is more, people feel more, younger people in particular, like, 20s, 30s, ish, 40s perhaps, feel that they have agency over their lives. And if something makes them feel uncomfortable or they view as unhealthy for them, they are taking more initiative to create boundaries. And the positive of that is also it's changing some patterns, and it's awakening a rippling effect of some of the parents who may not have realized that they have some self-reflecting to do, that they can use to do so and learn where they maybe weren't being there the way the adult child needs them to be, or when they were either younger or currently. Where they may focus too much on being the parent and need to back off a little bit. Any other growth opportunities. That's some of the positive of this, rippling effect. And some of the negative is it's one of the most excruciating things I witness for parents. And a lot of times I think the adult children don't realize the level of pain. And not that it's easy for the adult child either. There's a tremendous amount of pain and not taken lightly to cut ties, or to go low or no contact. But some of the other things that I see that is disappointing to see is a misunderstanding about what it means to be in contact with your parent. The idea that they are our source, and we cut off a part of ourselves and a part of who we are when we completely cut ties, and it misses the kind of line of energy that comes through by at least appreciating that these people gave me life and gave me the best that they could. And so, it's and parents are walking on eggshells, and adult children can be. That's the negative view. I'm not, there's different ways of looking at this, and each is case by case. But there's some who feel that it's being exaggerated, what's considered a toxic relationship. It can be considered by some that the adult children are making it sound more dramatic than it is for them.
Yeah, and I think, again, it goes back, like I said in my intro, to that perhaps it gets a little too black and white or 1 in 10, missing the complicatedness and making that time for understanding and going back over some of these kernels of anger and hurt that we've nourished, over time. And also sounds like what I was struck by is certainly my generation felt a deeper sense of obligation. So while my mother-in-law and father-in-law, and we had some oil and water moments, I still kind of sucked it up, really, and move along because, that's being respectful or whatever. So I think younger people have a point. And I also remember when a book came out, I think it was the 70s, about toxic parenting. And people would come in having read the book, and it would be this very black and white attitude. And I also appreciated what you said about parents who lack self-awareness. You used a different word, and that's what therapy does. They make parents bad, and it's like, well, no, no, it's a little more complicated. And I think in my own parenting, trying to own my strengths and weaknesses, more my weaknesses, because that's the basis of trust. But I'm a therapist. Parent. So I have a big sense of integrity about that. But I think for regular people in the world, that can be a really hard hill to climb.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if, some people are more naturally inclined to insight and to growth and self-examination or self-awareness. And this is very intergenerational, that people are kind of winging it when it comes to relationships in general, but certainly with parenting. And even if they did research and try to do their best, it can be taken, some even good ideas can be taken in a way that go too far or that aren't really coming from a place of integrity within one, of really enough maturity in oneself. So I think I'm always looking for where the growth is and trusting the process of life, that this is the bumpy road that we're on, but the bumps are really here to make us better drivers, or make us better, happier, more fulfilled, more sharing, giving people. And so as painful as it is, I'm always trying, when I meet with the parents more about estrangement than the adult children, but I often bring the adult children into the mix.
Absolutely, if possible.
Yes. If they're willing and they're valid. Most typically, the adult child has valid issues that from growing up and that are still perpetuating. And so then it becomes, the growth becomes such a gateway that the rupture becomes a gateway for so much growth, which is kind of my theme in life with my marriage, my relationship book, and also very overlapping with what's going on with adult children and their parents.
And it is the tenacity to be able to step on the broken glass, to use Annie Lennox, of trying to help each understand the other perspective,
yes.
and without that wall of defensiveness and fury or simplification, but keeping that dance of communication about misunderstandings is so important and hard to do.
Yes, it is. And there's, different levels of where you are, where each person might be with their adult child. There may be just a little strain, or they may be putting you at a little bit of a distance, or it could be that there's a huge rupture and it could be complete no contact. So every story is different. Every level of dynamic is different. But I think typically it starts with the parent to hold space for whatever the grievances are of the adult child. And, that can sound like so unfair. That's the thing I hear most of all. It is just not fair. And it is true. It is not fair. You gave so much. It doesn't mean you didn't do wonderful things and you aren't a wonderful parent in certain ways. But I saw it when my own adult children would come to me when they were usually it was mostly in their 20s. Now I think it's a developmental thing. There's variation, 20s, 30s, but ours happened to be in their 20s. And it was so painful and so difficult. But I saw it as part of my role as a parent to hold space for giving them a place where they could come to be heard and understood for even things that were related to what they didn't like, what I did, or what I missed, or what I said that I didn't even remember saying, or...
That's right. Yes.
And... yeah. And so that's kind of one of the first steps that I try to help parents with is if you look at it as a step-by-step process, and let's just slow down to speed up. It just, I see it as developmental for the adult child, and we're still here to support their journey. And as long as they're respectful and, in some kind of way, even if they have some anger, they can still communicate it in a way where they really share their truth. And the extent to which you hear them, can help them integrate and not feel like they have to go elsewhere, that they can actually come to you, even with their grievances about you. And that's just one of the things that's really missing.
I'm going to label it the heroic part of parenting.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect, Rhoda. Oh my, it is heroic. It is Olympic size
Yes.
internal strength.
Yes.
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 It takes a lot of courage and a lot of uncomfortableness
Yes.
and we are so lacking the ability, as I mentioned in the introduction, in our political system to deal with, I called it bipartisan agreements, which between people, that's what it is. It's bipartisan. I want to listen to you
Yeah.
and understand you, even if I don't agree with you. And I like your
Exactly.
word about holding space. That really makes sense to me. It's a nice way to put it, you know?
Yeah. And what I find is that once the adult child is heard, but we're really not great at this. So I'm like facilitating this typically, and I just know that don't feel bad if you're not. It is a really hard thing to do without that. Holding space means you're not explaining, you're not justifying, you're not really centering your own feelings or needs. You're really just trying to make sure you hear the other person and you appreciate the gravity of what that meant to them, and you become curious and not defensive and not critical. And then over time, it can leave room. Of course, every scenario is different. It can leave room for you to also then share your perspective, because that's really what a mutual relationship is. And as you become adult to adult, it's not like, you still have to just like bypass any of your own individuality and subjugate yourself only to your child. That sounds like too enabling and too keeping or, creating entitledness or selfishness. And that's not the point. It's just that it's the initial step is to hold space for that. And there's typically something of a very powerful, meaningful growth opportunity for that parent to really look at themselves. I have not found where there isn't something valid. Mostly. I mean, there are some, adult children who are really mentally unstable where, but even that if they have their own issues, there's still something about how there's still truths that are coming through about a better approach that would have been with that particular child, and to honor that. But with time, then you might find that most people find that they can also be heard by the adult child too.
One of my favorite things used to be when I had families was to have everybody go around the room and say something they really appreciated about each person in the family and something they could improve. And one of my favorite things was, particularly with teenagers, when they would say the things I'd been nagging the couple about, and because they're good observers and they did see. And then that kind of piled up with my feedback, and it really helped them cross that bridge into looking at themselves and understanding something important. And I think but it's quite a thing. I would also send adults home and say, ask your kid one way you can improve as a parent.
I love that.
And people would say, oh, I did, and the kid said there really wasn't anything. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. But I think they have a need to make you feel good. And you might want to say, you can be honest with me in the future if something comes up, to just kind of keep that open.
Absolutely.
In your Wall Street Journal article, you talked about the particularly deep pain of a parent estranged from an adult child. Please tell us more about that, because I do think that's one of the hardest.
Yes. In fact, one of the people who wrote a comment on that article was a man who said that he had listened to a podcast years and years and years ago where a parent who had been estranged, been cut off by an adult child, expressed how deep and painful and life-altering kind of pain. So it made him more sensitive to making sure that he had mercy with his parent, even though they were so imperfect. And that was such a beautiful story. And that parent ended up passing not that long ago. And he was so glad that he had really worked through a whole journey with that parent and didn't just cut that person off. And in fact, the end of the story was that that parent like really deeply apologized before dying and created such peace. And I just believe that reverberates and for generations. So that's partly why I think it's good to talk about the pain, so that adult children can also keep in mind not that they should not take care of themselves or do what they need, but also to just be not 1 or 10, but kind of also keeping that in mind. And also for the parent who is going through this to not feel alone and to feel validated by that and to be motivated to prevent it. Which, I watched the pain in my practice for years. So before my children became adult children, I really was prepared, more prepared than I would have been otherwise.
Yes.
So, but the pain is like, it's like they people liken it to someone has died, but they feel it's worse because they feel so deeply rejected and so much shame on top of it. And they're hearing about experiences and imagining experiences that they are not a part of. That so it's it's a deep soul thing. They're a part of us, and so there's some women I find, men, it's very painful for men too. I cannot say that there's like a demarcation, but I do know that women tend to identify more with their sense of self. And their sense of deep soul purpose, too, is centered around nurturing. And so then it can hit even more deeply with like feeling lost and feeling like you're really a bad person and needing to prove that you're not a bad person. So it can reach lots of layers in terms of your sense of self. And just the level of grieving. I really use a grieving model, of course, Yeah. And in the grieving model that I like the 6th stage that's been added, which was approved by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross before she passed by like a protege of hers. That is the 6th stage of the meaning making, which is, I view that as looking for the growth. How can you make meaning out of going through this?
Oh, that's really lovely.
Yeah.
The emotional distance of estrangement can be both punishment and protection. Could you help us understand both of these different points of view?
Yes. So the punishment is the anger, the revenge, the wanting someone else to hurt because you're hurting. The really still as part of the grieving process and development, in any area, but even in your own family issues that you've had and your developmental trauma you feel like you've had, then the anger stage and the bargaining stage, which is if only they had been different, they should have done it better. And when I meet with people who are in their 30s and they're still kind of in that stage. When they're in that stage, it's a little hard to reason with them. But I find that it's typically always blended with protection. It's never just, I just want them to suffer. It's really hard to distinguish the difference. But some have no interest in punishment. They literally just really feel that in order for them to feel like they can actualize the life that they want, the environment that they feel they need to have, and the mental health that they're seeking, that they don't feel that they can keep re-entering into the same dynamic. Often it's if it's not just what happened in the past, it's often if it's something is continuing in the future, in the present, that feels unhealthy for them. And some are just literally detached and uninterested. Like, you were that for me when I was a kid, and I'm fine without you. And they don't really grasp or sense something missing in their life. And so they're just indifferent. That's a pretty deep level of detachment at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
As a therapist for more than 40 years, I'm aware of how often, and I am going to say this and not trying to stereotype, but it's my experience, daughter-in-laws, and of course son-in-laws can also be part of it, can steer the ship of not sharing holiday time, which leads to greater distance that builds up over time. The daughter's parents get to babysit, and the in-laws don't have it so easy to claim grandparent time. I think the value of fairness can help people with this struggle, but tell us your advice, because it's just something I've bumped into quite often.
Well, it opens up a big topic about when your children partner up and get married.
Yes.
And or get married, and how much that is a huge, when you said, what are the causes of estrangement? Often the new family member that's joined doesn't just go along with the status quo. They're like, what? This is not, are you kidding? And so that challenges the whole, operating system or family system. And so whether it's about holidays or whether it's usually related to weddings or a trigger.
Calling with my in-laws, it was, you need to call before you pop in,
Yeah, exactly. Boundaries around, exactly. Those are all the things that how enmeshed or how involved are they in the family, and what are the rules and the boundaries, and they have to. So just be prepared. It's going to be so different, and you lose a lot of control as a parent once you have in-laws. And so when it comes to holidays or take your involvement with grandkids or. I think it's a real recipe of both letting go and accepting.
Yes.
Because if you don't, then you make a mess.
And it is about those polarities of, the families that are too distant from each other and the families that are too enmeshed with each other, and then trying to solve how to make it work for the new family that's begun.
Yes.
And it's really hard.
It's really hard. Like, I never realized how challenging and sometimes painful it is to be a parent of an adult child. You just kind of think, and on some level, yes, you've raised them, you're not in the thick, that's on them now, but there's whole other expectations that we have, dreams we have, changes that we didn't expect would happen, and anywhere from their belief systems to the path they choose, to the person they choose, to the career they choose, to the city they live in, to, and it just is it's such a growth opportunity of letting go, but not so polarized where you don't ever express yourself or ask for, weigh in with how might it work best for us to have more time together, or, so it's really about the nuance of how to navigate. It is like, you can't just say this is the one thing you should do. It's case by case, and the more that you are not centering your feelings too much and your needs too much, and being, careful. I'm talking from the vantage of the parent.
Yes. Yes.
Of course, I'd love to get my hands on the adult children too, which I do to some degree in my practice. But I think it's to really honor and learn to let go when they're starting to make choices. The paradox is you will be more part of their life the more you support their individuality and their free will to choose the life that they want. And at times, it's fitting, but I say it should be rare, that you might want to weigh in, like that you're concerned about something, or you might want to ask, like if you're concerned about something of a choice they're about to make, or something that's going on in their life, or that something isn't honoring your lineage, or, you have to be so incredibly careful. And just come with, really with curiosity. I'm just wanting to first learn, seek to understand first what it means to them and what their thinking is here, or why they feel like this is good for them. And do you think there's any, help them see cause and effect. But weighing in can sound like criticism, though.
Yeah,
to that age.
But it does have to be about also expressing a point of view without, you can't swallow the whole thing. There has to be room for, and it's funny, I've made a joke often that I say, I edit myself so much with my adult children. It's just, I probably say less than I've ever said in my life,
exactly. Yes. Yes. And it's changing. It's also because we have to adjust to the culture now. Like I started off weighing in more, thinking that's my job. And then I'm being irresponsible if I don't, and then even when I would do it, then the goal would be to express it and to let them know I accept and love you no matter what you decide. But these are some of the things I'm seeing, and here's why. This is, what we have learned, as parents or as people, that this might matter to you in some day, or this, but then it's ultimately, I trust you to make the best decision for you, and whatever you decide, we're all in and supportive.
It's that respect for differences that is so hard to come by these days.
It is.
How can people support themselves and survive emotionally through estrangement?
Yeah.
When it isn't going to shift.
Yeah. So that is a lot of what I do spend time with parents, is just helping them take care of themselves. And it starts with being self-loving and self-compassionate. The last thing we need is to be beating ourselves up when we're going through terrible pain. So often that's missing anyway. Who doesn't lack that? But especially that kind of scenario seems to be even more prominent. So the first step is really learning how to be as kind and loving to yourself as possible. And then from there, it's really also to kind of pick up your, big person pants and look for, how is this here to help me grow? That's one thing we do have control over. We can't control what's happened in the past. We can't control maybe how a person has responding to us. But we can control what we do with it. We can control what we learn and grow from it. And that's where we need to find our inner power. That seems to be the language I use with a lot of the adult parents, is like, it's just time to start connecting with your inner power, because it's so easy for it to be given away in general, but especially in this case, they hold, it's hard to find your balance and your equilibrium unless you can get that reconnection. And so then it's, while working on the grieving and taking care of the self-compassion includes letting yourself really nurture yourself for the pain you're in, but also to balance it with getting busy with seeking and exploring where you can learn and grow and how you can use what you're going through to be for the sake of helping others in some way or another, and putting it to use, like good use. Whatever we go through, that's our choice. That's our free will. And that can help assuage a bit of the helplessness and the powerlessness that can come with this, is that there's nothing I can do. But that's where I try to find, help people find their agency, and then really also nourish the things that you do have in your life that are loving and nurturing. Often it's really just with one child. Every so often it's like the whole family has cut that person off, but usually it's just one child. So really also appreciating any child is so different that it may have worked fine with one, but it just your way did not work with another. And then nourishing the other ways that you can be parenting or mothering or fathering, and, like with people that are in your life, and looking for ways that you can add value. It really is it's healing. It's healing.
It makes me think of AA and how they have people sponsor other people. And that is absolutely, it's finding value in a different relationship in a different way. Yeah. That's really lovely.
And I also believe in quantum. I'm listening to the telepathy tapes, and I love the way they talked about, which is about autistic non-speaking. They're learning that they are speaking to each other telepathically.
Oh.
And they were talking about how science, there's this whole long thing, but like how science talks about quantum and how, which is non-moving, non-locating communication. So two atoms that have once been somewhat connected can be very far apart, and they are communicating with each other. So I also really try to help parents stay in non-location communication with their child. And I know it sounds a little woo-woo or strange, but it really, you have a soul-to-soul connection. You have, for eternity, you will always be bound. I believe that. Mm-hmm. And so, you can even like write letters that you don't send, that you keep, of like well-wishing, pray for them, do positive actions. And that the light, the glow that's generated from that positive action of sharing or giving of charity or of money or of time or whatever, you can send that to them and wish them well. Wish them, may you be happy, may you have peace, may you be safe. Like you can stay connected metaphysically.
Okay, I think that's possible. Since there is so much silence around why there is estrangement, many do not even begin to understand why it happened. How do we help people heal from the grief of family loss when it's so ambiguous?
Oh, so
that's
good.
A tough one.
Yes. Most people that I meet with that are parents, they don't get why it happened. But a lot of that is because of the window of self-awareness is not their fault. They just can't see why. So the first step in that is to take all the feedback you've gotten, whether it's from them or from others who have been in touch with, because usually there's other people, allies who are trying to help you out, and they're learning information, or allies of the person who's been estranged, who's like telling you like it's, or other people that you've also raised, or just get as much feedback as you possibly can. And then you can speak with a family therapist. I mean, preferably someone who specializes in this, because it is I've learned that it's not just your regular old family counseling thing. There's some nuances, but then it might be helpful to start putting together the pieces, because knowledge gives you more control. Even if it's not like a place to heal it, it's really helpful to get to put the pieces together. And typically, I've never met with someone that we couldn't identify what it was about. But it's like you have to be investigative, and
like a detective,
and it's often, yeah, exactly. And you're going to need somebody else who sees what you can't see.
Yeah.
Then from there, that can be empowering, because then you can work on those things. Even if you're not in touch with them, you can still work on those things and grow, and you can get a lot of, get a lot of fulfillment from that, and a lot of empowerment from that. And then the rest is about letting go and surrendering. I like this quote, this affirmation from Kristen Neff, who talks about self-compassion. And she talks about equanimity, which she defines as the balance and calm we find when we embrace human imperfection with an open heart.
I like that a lot. I'm always saying that part of growth is accepting our humanity. We screw up. I mean, we're human beings. That's why I enjoy the science fiction murder bot books, because he's not human, and he has all this sarcasm about humans.
What is it?
It's a series of sci-fi, and it's called Murder Bot, and Apple just did a show, but it's by Martha Wells. But the cynicism about, they're so messy, and they're like so annoying, and it's very funny.
Exactly.
And it can help
and
you.
It's not just
exactly,
and it's not just like your own human imperfection, absolutely, but it's also whatever's imperfect that's going on in the relationship right now, or whatever you can't understand, just, embracing that human imperfection, but mostly keeping your heart open.
And I think one of the things you can learn is we avoid uncertainty so much. It's almost pathological. And I think culturally. And because making an agreement, a bipartisan agreement, involves a lot of uncertainty. And I think that uncertainty is something, that's the learning piece, or the getting wiser piece from a terrible event. But you learn to live with uncertainty, which is what we're surrounded by most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good piece too.
Yes.
In what situations might estrangement be the healthiest or most protective choice? I just wanted to be clear about that part.
Yeah. I think if an adult child is finding that they cannot cope, that the anxiety, the overwhelm, some kind of trauma response that tends to happen, the nervous system kind of breakdown or overload in that environment, and you don't feel strong enough or mature, or healed enough, and you need that space to honor yourself and take care of yourself and get stronger. Then I think I see it sometimes as stages or chapters, that this is a chapter where I need space. I need to get stronger and individuate and get clear about who I am. And I'm too entangled in my sense of self that is around my interactions with my parent. And I need to really find my center. Then I think it can be really, and if you feel like you can't do that in the context of being in contact, then I encourage it, but you can do it in a merciful way if possible, which is to perhaps prepare the parent, and say, I hope that someday we can be more connected. I'm going through something that I find I need space in order to do this for myself. And it's not because I don't appreciate what you've given. Yes, I have grievances about how you parented me, but I'm not coming to do your best to not come from a place of judgment, and more out of choosing oneself. I'm choosing me right now.
Yeah, and I've had clients come in and say that they were an individual, and that's a conclusion, and then we do the family work. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Like this is just a stage of where I am, and and a lot of them ask their parent to go to counseling too, which parents usually get a little, a little perturbed about that. Like that's not your place to tell me to go to therapy, but they're often really probably accurate. So that's another tricky nuance to deal with.
That's right.
Yes.
I believe, and you've touched on this already, that people feel deeply there's something wrong with them if in estrangement. And are there also common misconceptions or societal judgments that you often hear about estranged individuals?
Well, the most common conclusion is that just like if you have a child who has mental health issues or addiction, or it's usually that the parents are viewed as it's been their fault. And I think it just, we all are here to learn and grow. And so for whatever reason, it becomes more visible and more out there to the world that whatever issues you had as a parent, they really interface with whatever the child's uniqueness is, their neurodiversity, their mental health issues, and that it's, but often it's just the parents get blamed. And I think that that's something that we can all work on, is to not judge as much and to understand that it's much more complex. And connect to the humanity that we all have been imperfect. And some people, it shows up in ways that they end up going through more loss than others. But no one's immune to making mistakes or we're on a journey. We didn't arrive perfect. We're not here to be perfect. We are constantly evolving.
And I think some of that judgment or smugness, I must have been a better parent than you, secret wish underneath or something. I think, again, that has a certainty quality to it, and kind of arriving with more uncertainty and not assuming, well, I'm cooler than you, or I need to be cooler than you in some way. And it's such a hard thing because, life is complicated and difficult, but there's so many ways that we don't appreciate somebody's backstories. I was just, I had somebody for 2 women for lunch, and one has never been married and never had children, and I've got a couple of friends in that situation, and people don't appreciate. It's like they back up even. One moved and she was going different religious places trying to find a connection. But she said, people say, oh, well, tell us about your kids, and she'd be like, don't have any. Oh, okay, so how's your husband? Is he gone or what? No, never got married. And it's really a cultural place we don't support enough.
Right. And we make assumptions, and then that sends the message that that's the only way that you're really fitting in life.
And there must have been something wrong with you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's so. Yeah. There's so much of judgment.
And I just think it's always good to we all need so much work to do to just choose compassion and curiosity, and versus judging, and we protect ourselves. We're like, oh, that didn't happen to me. They must have done something wrong, but. We have our own trials and tribulations, and that's maybe not yours, but you might have others. And, just this is where I try to encourage trusting that to see the universe as friendly and like that we each have our unique lessons to learn. And, just to be supportive and compassionate that this is how yours is being taught. And one of the things that I wanted to add is what's so sad and hard is that a lot of the parents who are estranged from their children, it does come often from their own, how they were parented and their own traumas. And so then the intergenerational trauma, it can just keep carrying on, where then you were hurt when you were a child and felt rejected. And then you get rejected again because you didn't know how to approach your children. And I think that's just where we need to have compassion for, we don't know the backstory. And anything we can do to help evolve the process of our lineage to where there's more wholeness, more healing, more forgiveness, more correcting of imbalances, and more, education of and more healing, then we're helping generations forward.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. What are your thoughts on the phrase, but they're your family, which is often the response people hear?
Yeah. There's many different tracks. It depends on your value system. There's not a right or wrong about that. I think that I personally think there's something about a kind of soul connection, blood connection, that you do more to work through things with your family than you might with other people. And I see that as because there's something you're supposed to learn from that person because you can't get rid of them. But, now people are getting, quote, rid of them. And, I think it's an opportunity to learn unconditional love and acceptance. And to still embrace somebody as family doesn't mean you give over to their rules for how they do their life or their rules for how frequently you're together or how that's going to go down. You can still create, boundaries, for yourself, or like how you can do it and to stay connected, that you have a different version of the relationship maybe than they have in their mind, but you can still try to honor the connection. Because when as much as we have cutoffs, it's quantum, as I said earlier, and it can create problems for us in other areas of life. I also really personally believe that the level of appreciation, especially parents, that our life itself, we wouldn't be here. And so when we cut off appreciation from the source of what gave us life, then it actually hurts us too. So I do have and all that can be done with nuance. Like you can still respect and honor your parent and also protect and honor yourself.
Yes, the two opposite things.
And
both
exactly
can happen. Absolutely.
Yes. At the same time, I also think that we sometimes overemphasize our families, and like if it's not really your path, I don't believe we're obligated to believe what our family believes or follow the religion that our family, gave us. Like you need to decide on your own individuality, your own unique path. And I think we can keep ourselves too small if we do everything to stay fitting in with our family. But I still think you can honor the connection you have and honor your own unique individuality at the same time. And that would be my goal, is to try to help people find that balance, walk that bridge.
And wandering around in the uncertainty is part of finding the balance. You can't say, well, this is going to be the solution. You have to do that wandering. And I think sometimes as a culture, we want that straight line of progress, and the wandering is difficult.
Yeah.
Exactly. What advice would you give to someone who is newly estranged and struggling?
Yes. I was hoping to get to that because there are certain things that I've learned through trial and error, like by meeting with this whole population or a group of people that are facing this, is that as the parent, and this is starting, if you start noticing strain or if it's already at estrangement where there's a real clear sense of cutting off, that the most important thing to consider is, to the extent on your own, if you can listen better than you've listened before. And you think you're listening, but typically we're defending or we're explaining or we're expressing our needs and wants and our perspective. And we have so many blind spots about this. So if you feel like you're really able to successfully do this on your own, you can start to heal. But it has to first start with, I really want to learn what it is that I've done that made you feel that this is the healthiest thing for you to do. Because you wouldn't do it if it wasn't healthy for you. Like give your adult child the empowerment, the benefit of the doubt that you believe in them to make good choices for themselves. Even though it's going to kill you, like hurt you so, I don't mean kill you, but hurt you so deeply inside, like this, like you said, heroic level of holding space. And but because there's so many blind spots, I would encourage you to seek a counselor, especially someone who specializes in estrangement, to help you learn and identify and sort through, do the detective work to figure out what is it that I'm doing that's pushing them away. It doesn't mean that they aren't wrong also, or they aren't involved in explaining why this is happening. They have their own. Like many who have learning disabilities, I find, are more vulnerable to estranging because they still feel like they're treated like a child, or they have other kinds of developmental issues too that make it harder for them to cope with this. So they just need to go away in order to emancipate or to individuate. So it's not like it's just you. They may have been a very difficult kid, or they may have been one of those what is called now by Dr. Becky Kennedy. She calls it like I think big feeling child. Like where you may have been where you were dysregulated easily, or so it's not like it's just about you, but the first step is for you to try to own and look at what it is that you are doing with this particular child or with this particular daughter-in-law or son-in-law that has made them feel that they are not safe to be close to you, because they naturally probably would want to be close to you. Most, not all, but most. And to do that, you want to comb through that with a therapist, I believe is good. And then from there, you can let your adult child know. These are like the steps that I am working on myself, that I have realized I have some self-reflecting to do. And I'm taking in, any feedback is welcome about what made you feel like you can't be close to me. And I promise I'll listen. I just want to learn. I want to learn. And I'm working with someone to help me with that. The adult children love that. They feel like, there's somebody who is, helping them, like involved in this, where it's not just all on me to try to hold this container of what's going to help me feel better in this relationship. They've got somebody else helping them. And but the more you do it authentically, the better, that you really learn. And then eventually you could ask the adult child to meet with your therapist so that they can share with the therapist what it is that it was like for them to have you as a parent, so that they can help me grow and help me work on those things and understand you better, and understand myself better. And then ultimately you could then come together and facilitate a conversation where the parent can hear them out and develop a new way forward. So it just depends. These are just some of the steps that can happen. And it depends on so many factors.
Yes. But what I appreciate is how you're connecting the things we've been talking about in a hopeful way. But being clear about being willing to look at yourself and hold that heroic space.
Yeah.
That you and not saying that that's easy. That's why we attach the word heroic. That it's a really hard thing to do. Yes. And so being able to do that, I think, is really important. Mm-hmm. Any last wisdom you want to throw out there?
I would come back to really being as loving and kind to yourself as possible. That whatever you're facing, to embrace it, and to with love for and compassion for yourself, and also to lean into it, to not resist it. That's part of the stages of grief, is the bargaining, where we just are like, it's kind of a mix of denial-ish. But the bargaining stage is, if only I'd done that, if only they would just do that. It's like trying to control something you can't control.
That's right.
Then you get caught up in the ruminating, which is a common scenario.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because, that's what people do. I should have done this. I should have done that. Why didn't I do this? Yeah.
And outward ruminating of like, why can't they just do this? Why do they have to be like this? Like the outward critic kind of thing.
You're right. It's
and to really do your best to let go and accept your present reality. This is where you find yourself, and you're not alone, and there's a common humanity going through this or some other kind of pain, and see if you can like slow down to speed up, and how you can find the gifts in it. Mm. And that would be what I would suggest.
Great. Please remind people of your book and your website.
Yes, so my book is called A Soulful Marriage, Healing Your Relationship with Responsibility, Growth, Priority, and Purpose. And some of the same pillars are very relevant for this relationship. Many of my parents that I work with, actually, without me suggesting it, they just heard about my book and they got the book, and they're going through it, especially because of the self-awareness piece. That the first pillar is your relationship with yourself. And that's the same step one in this dynamic as it is within your couple relationship. And my website is Dr. Rachel Glick, DrRachel Glik. And on there you can see there's a tab that says book. There's a tab for media, which you can see the articles I've written, but also you can find, ways to order the book as well.
Estrangement is never easy, whether you're the one who stepped away or the one left behind. We hope this conversation offered you space to reflect, soften some of the hard edges, or simply feel less alone in the complexity. Remember, healing doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes it means moving forward with clarity and care. My website has over 450 pages of free information without ads, therapy ideas, .net. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.